Ladies and gentlemen, glad to announce our next pre-conference episode on substance management and compliance. The conference will be taking place on 22nd, 23rd of April in a virtual format. I'm happy to announce our guest, Stijn Steuperaert of CentexbelVKC. And Stijn will be presenting at the conference on screening methods for REACH SVHC testing in the textile and plastics industry. And we will cover very interesting topics on brief summary for REACH, particularly for the textile and plastics industry, screening methods for REACH compliancy testing, XRF-screening, LCMS-screening, ICPMS, thermal extraction, and we also will share several case studies. So with no further ado, Stijn, good to have you here. Let's start the podcast, a little preview of what will be happening on the conference day at 22nd of April at 13:40.
Yes. Thank you, Georgie. Thank you for having me here. Of course, we are very glad that we get the ability to show some of the very interesting things that we are doing at CentexbelVKC. CentexbelVKC is the competence center for textiles and plastics industry, and basically we are a membership organization. So every textile company and plastic company in Belgium pays a fee with us, and we provide them with consultants. We help them in research projects. We also help them guiding them through several processes of applicant or approval for several projects, funding, and so on. So basically, we are here. We are there for the textile and plastic industry, and we are ready to help them. The reason why I wanted to give a lecture about REACH is because it's a subject that is very important at the moment, and it was also very important in the past, but it started in 2007, and we have seen that it has grown. It's been bigger, and it changes a lot. And we know that our companies, our members, they are not able to keep track on it, and therefore we come in and we have the ability to actually have a look at it daily, I must say, and we are expert at this area, and this is the reason why we wanted to share our knowledge and share our screening methods to test for REACH SVHC substances. In general, SVHC, it's in fact applicable to any kind of article in REACH. The limit is 0.1%, and if you have some of the SVHC presence in your article, you are obliged, according to REACH Article 33, to communicate this. And for the textile and plastics industry, we can help these companies with guidance and with testing in order to see if they comply or not. I'm speaking about textiles and plastics. Of course, this is very broad, but we can also test, for example, for toys or plastic materials in general. Maybe some people are producing other plastic materials which do not belong to this kind of category which I'm talking about here. Definitely, we are able to help them. So in the presentation during the conference, I will give a brief summary of REACH with the main topics, and this will include the SVHC story, the Annex 14 and then Annex 17, to actually show to you what the three main topics are behind REACH at article level. And then, of course, I want to go into detail the methods that we use in Centexbel in our chemical lab to screen for these SVHC substances. So basically, we have a package of 4 tests which are used to screen qualitatively for the SVHC substances. At this moment, the list contains 211 substances. This means that we combine 4 tests to screen qualitatively to the limit of 0.0%. If we have an indication that a substance would be present close to 0.1%, we can actually offer a quantitative test to determine the exact concentration and be able to do the check with the reach compliancy and to check it with the 0.1%. So basically, the four tests are XRF-screening, LCMS-screening, ICPMS, and thermal extraction. XRF-screening is in fact an elemental analysis. It works the same way as you go to the airport to check for metals, and we specifically screen for elements that are mentioned on the SVHC list. The ICPMS test is a specific test which is developed to determine boron. Boron is too small to see in the XRF screening, and that's why we have to do a separate test for this, because there are boron-related compounds on the SVHC list. The thermal extraction is a very interesting technique in which we heat a sample and everything that comes out is analyzed by GCMS. Normally we take or we heat the sample 30 minutes, 120 degrees, and then we can get a profile of all the semi-organic volatile compounds that are present in the sample. This is interesting, of course, when we look at, for example, fire retardants or other components in textiles or in plastics, which are mentioned on the SVHC list and which we can determine with thermal extraction. And then the last test is, of course, an additional test to actually screen for all the components that cannot be screened with the other methods that are explained before. And this is the LCMS screening. So there we can see, for example, the PFC related compounds. So for oil and water repellency that are mentioned on the SVHC list that we can screen. We can also screen for foaming agents like ATCA, also UV stabilizers, very important for textiles and plastics, could be screened over there. So basically this package of 4 testing, it's very important, and we screen qualitatively for the limit of 0.1%. And last but not least, I wanted to show how we do this in practice. So how we look at this, because we are expert in many types of textiles and plastics in this area, and we have seen many examples. We do also testing for the government, which in Belgium selects samples to test for REACH SVHC or other things in REACH compliancy. So we are very experienced in this topic, and we are very happy to tell you more about it.
Thank you very much. It sounds extremely interesting indeed. The last is, as I understand, providing some case studies, right? You'll be showing some case studies of how this testing is done. Can you tell us more about it? Will it be a case study about specific company, whether it will be some specific product? What should we anticipate there as a practical case study, something to take away from the conference?
Yes. So what I will discuss there is that basically from the beginning, so a company, a textile or a plastic company or a toy company has a specific problem. For example, they have been checked by the government, or they have done checks themselves that there is chemistry present which is mentioned in REACH and which is not compliant, and they do not know how to proceed with this. So for example, you have some kind of outdoor shoe where you have a PVC part at the heel which contains some phthalates which are listed in REACH, and this kind of phthalate, it's mentioned on the SVHC list, it's mentioned in Annex 14, it's mentioned in Annex 17. And there I will discuss how we handle or how we tackle this kind of specific problems, because companies sometimes they do know which chemical they are dealing with, but they do not know in which kind of list they have to look to actually know if they are REACH compliant or not. And if they are not REACH compliant, what do they have to do?
Okay, you raised a very good, topic for the next question. Who needs to get tested? Because not who needs to get tested, but which companies need to get tested, because there is a lot of companies which I believe, from speaking with various professionals and experts in the industry, that are still in the shadows, and they think it's not for them, but in reality they should go out of the comfort zone, and then it's not a should, it's a must. So can you elaborate more a little, more about this topic? Just
Yes.
tell us who is the companies, which industry should get
Yes,
tested,
okay.
please.
First of all, if you bring an article, and an article in REACH is an end product, if you bring an article, and this could also be something different from textiles or plastic, basically any article, if you produce it or you import it, and you as a company bring it firstly onto the European market, you are responsible to reach compliancy, which means that if government does check you, which they do a lot at this time now, and they see that if your sample is not REACH compliant, you can get a fine for it. Now we completely understand that some small companies, like you say, are still in the shadow, and they say, "Oh, REACH is not for us because it's too big. We don't understand it, and the government is not checking it." But at the moment, they do check it. So basically, any company who brings an article into the European market is responsible that it is REACH compliant. Of course, if you work with your raw materials coming from European suppliers, you should be informed about the REACH compliancy, or maybe if an SVHC is present for more than 0.1% in the raw materials that you buy, you should be informed that this is coming from an EU company. Of course, when there are a lot of companies that we know, members of us, who produce things outside of Europe, who import it into the European Economic Area, of course, there you have to have some documents which are signed by the companies from the Middle East, for example, or you have some labels in case of textiles which can guarantee REACH compliancy, which is Oecotex, for example. Oecotex is a label that guarantees safe textiles free from toxics for human and environment. So if you buy some raw materials outside of Europe, you have to have the documents signed from your suppliers. If you don't have these documents, you can request your suppliers to provide some test reports that indicate that the raw materials that are delivered are REACH compliant. And in the worst case, if you don't get anything back, you don't have signed REACH compliancy letters, or you don't have test reports, you might be you might do a spot check with CentexbelVKC, for example, to check if everything is REACH compliant. And there we come in. We actually check the end product. We know you provide us the composition. We look at it and we say this, and this should be tested in order to see if you are fully REACH compliant.
Okay. This is an unfolded answer. Thank you for that. Following up on what you just said, and I, let's say, quoting that now the government is testing it a bit more and they're checking it a bit more, what you are doing on the European market, right? What do you think? How do you foresee the European Green Deal and strategy for sustainability will affect the activity, or let's say the level of the activeness of the government within checking even smaller scale companies, and what kind of changes will we see here, and how will it affect, let's say, the need for the companies to do the testing?
Yes. So I think, and we were also part of it in 2014, the member states started to harmonize the testing methods for REACH, because before 2014, every member state, they were doing checks, minimal checks, but they also had a different testing methods. So from 2014 onwards, member states actually were aligning the test methods for whole Europe. So it means that if you are testing a chemical which is mentioned in REACH now, for example, lead in PVC or cadmium in plastic articles, it will be done by every member state with the same testing method, which means that ECHA, the European Chemical Agency, which is actually the organization which controls REACH, that they are now able to compare results from different member states with each other, and they also produce this kind of reports where they focused on several topics in REACH, several chemicals in REACH. To answer your question about the Green Deal, we have seen that that the PFAS, so the perfluoroalkylsulfone substances, so basically the C8, the C6 chemistry, is a hot topic at the moment, and the Green Deal wants to go towards a toxic-free environment without PFAS. PFAS is very important for the textile industry because it can be used for oil, water, and dirt repellency, for example, in PPE clothing and so on. And the PFAS are in fact an environmental problem. These are a long chains of fluorocarbon bonds, which can not be decreased by, for example, the environment. So if they are released into the environment, they are very, very persistent, and they will not break into smaller chains, which means that it's a huge problem that has to be tackled. And this is also one of the main things of the Green Deal. A second part is that Europe is now, and we are also participating in a project, has now launched a call for an enforcement project. So that we have an approval for a project which will start in the coming months. To actually create a level playing field in Europe, which means that in the project it is described that we work together with other organizations to provide education to the border customs in order to provide them valuable information to check in textile or in plastic level what kind of materials are a risk to come into Europe, which have how would I say, harmful chemicals. And this is one of the main pillars of this kind of project, that we give education to the border customs, and we have close collaboration with them in order to show them what the risks are. Of course, there will also be some testing in this kind of project to see what kind of articles really enter the market, not only via companies, but also via the e-commerce and so on. What are the main risks? So we really want to define for textiles, what are the main risks, textiles that are coming into Europe, and we will define the chemicals there. And this is something we can work on, and something where customs have to pay attention to.
I mean, this is a very interesting scenario, because to say the least, this is very interesting scenario. What will be happening? How efficient will be the industry so for swiftly embracing these regulations, and hopefully that we will see a good symbiosis between what is needed to done and the need and the want, so to say. The companies will be able to embrace that into practice. And you mentioned also extremely important let's say area or sentence, a level playing field.
Yes.
A level playing field for all the European manufacturers, because European manufacturers should not feel disadvantaged. They should not feel, let's say, punished for following being the good guys.
That's
so
true.
Yes, hopefully this will be and also REACH will close a lot of loopholes. But again, this is my comment, and most likely it will be cut out. Usually,
Yes.
At least from my comment, I can be saying something in a different direction.
Yeah.
Look, Stijn, definitely we're looking forward for your presentation. Interesting and important indeed. I would like to ask you one final question, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Which industry would you highlight, let's say, that would be more relevant for this in the nearest future? We know that you work with the, you specialize on textile and plastics, but who should we send a message to, let's say, to pay more attention, to be more active, saying even from your, from your experience, which member companies you have and which companies are more, let's say, prone to, let's say, ignoring, and they should be more attentive. Is there any industry that the changes are coming and you should pay more attention to this? Would you put any comment on that?
Yes, I think maybe the clothing industry, because they are at a higher risk, I must say. So you have many clothing companies, they have producers in the Middle East and they import the clothing, and all those companies, they are mostly very small, so they don't have enough money to do the testing. But of course, these are also the products that are tested in the shops for the government, and also higher risk products, because if there is a chemical present in your t-shirt or your shirt, for example, and you wear it for 8 hours a day, you are exposed to a harmful chemical. And I know that there are a lot of small clothing companies who actually are not looking into REACH. Some of them have Oecotex on their clothing, so this is also very good, because Oecotex guarantees REACH compliancy. But there are also other ones, they don't have the budget to do testing, and definitely not in this kind of corona crisis, because the shops have been closed for certain months. They get stuck with their stock, which is not sold, so they don't have any money left for testing, and so I really think that there is a big problem over there. Other companies which I do know of, like carpet companies or protective clothing companies and so on, they all have some systems available, because they are huge companies, to be able to be compliant with REACH. And other companies which sometimes contacts us, but we are now looking also into that, are toy companies. So since some toys are made of PVC, we have the risk there for phthalates being present, and also the toys are also compared to the textiles are also made, for example, in the Middle East. Middle East are imported here, and then they are brought onto the European market, and they still contain this kind of, if I can say it like that, toxic phthalates. And now CentexbelVKC is looking in the short term to become also a notified body for toy certification. So we are already notified body for Oecotex certification and for protective clothing also, and for carpets. But we are looking in the short term also to become a notified body for toy testing, CE certification of toys. So to answer your question, which companies should pay more attention to this lecture, or which companies we can help? Basically, any company who is working with textiles, fibers, or who is producing yarns or trading in yarns, companies who are producing plastics like window frames or PVC compounds, or any other type of plastic material, toy companies and so on. I think this is the main focus.
Toy companies is also the main focus. Okay. Stijn, thank you very much for providing us definitely the information. Where should we be where? And I cannot agree with you more that after the COVID-19, the closing companies, when the shops are closed, everything is closed, people, consumer, let's say consumer focuses on the basic needs. People
Indeed.
don't often buy clothes anymore because maybe they're spending time in a lockdown. It's an additional burden for the budget, which I understand it can be very painful. But definitely, one way or another, they need to get their products tested, right? This is the message that we're showing. Despite all that,
Indeed.
despite all that.
Indeed.
I have a question regarding the upcoming regulations. What will happen with the legacy products? For example, you have the legacy product on your stock, and the upcoming, there are the changes to the REACH. There is this, strategy coming into force. How will this affect? And again, this is the message for the companies that are out there, okay, which are thinking, okay, we have to do the testing, we have to be, pay more attention to REACH every time we will import something from, whether it will be Middle East or anywhere outside of EU. But what about the goods they already have on their warehouses? What will happen there? Do they have to test them as well, or they're already here, they sell it, or what happens there? Can you if
Yes.
you have any information?
Yes. So, and within REACH, for example, if something new comes into force, it really states that articles which are produced, and then is the production date, articles which are produced after a certain date cannot contain this or that chemical anymore. So there it's very clear. You have this date, and if the articles, you have some kind of, I guess, back tracing system to know when the product was produced. So if your production date is before the date that the legislation comes into force, you can still put it on the market. That's as clear as that.
But in case you do not have, let's say we're speaking about a smaller company who is a clothing company. They have the textiles bought, I don't know how long time ago, and simply that time they were able to import it. And now,
yes,
they're manufacturing. I mean, it's a legacy product, so they will have to test it, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, REACH does not oblige you to test. REACH obliges you to comply with REACH. So you are responsible. So REACH doesn't say you have to test. REACH say you have to be responsible, or you are responsible that everything you bring onto the European market is REACH compliant. And how you do that? If you do that via your trusted Middle East suppliers, and they give you testing reports, or they sign you REACH compliancy documents, and you're sure that it's okay, then you're okay. Mm-hmm. But at the end, if you have a check from the government and you are non-compliant, you will pay the fine because you are responsible. So I think when you have a doubt, I would seriously advise to come to us and to do a spot check to see if everything that comes in from the Middle East is okay. And maybe we can do it. We can do it at client level. So that's one of our strengths, that is close collaboration and close contact with the client. So if the client says, I have a product here which I sell, which is my most selling product, let's start with this. We will be able to look together with the client to offer a test package which will be as cheap as possible, to know as much information about the chemicals as possible.
Okay. Clear. Stijn, I think we covered that would be interesting and relevant for the audience.
I hope so.
I believe a little bit more. We will have more information, not a little bit, but the majority of the information, how these all things are done. I think that you will speak about the spot checks as well as the part of your presentation. So yeah, thank you very much. And for podcast episodes, and thank you for joining us as the speaker. We're all looking forward for a very good and productive conference on April 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much, Georgie. I still want to thank you, of course, to give us the opportunity to give a lecture, and of course we are also looking forward to it, to the 22nd of April, to provide more details about this very interesting topic.